Madam, said Debray, it is nearly 6 months since we have been associated. You furnished a principal of 100,000 francs. Our partnership began in the month of April. In May we commenced operations, and in the course of the month gained 450,000 francs. In June the profit amounted to 900,000. In July we added 1,700,000 francs, it was, you know, the month of the Spanish bonds. In August we lost 300,000 francs at the beginning of the month, but on the 13th we made up for it, and we now find that our accounts, reckoning from the first day of partnership up to yesterday, when I closed them, showed a capital of 2,400,000 francs, that is, 1,200,000 for each of us. Now, madam, said Debray, delivering up his accounts in the methodical manner of a stockbroker, there are still 80,000 francs, the interest of this money, in my hands. But, said the Baroness, I thought you never put the money out to interest. Excuse me, madam, said Debray coldly, I had your permission to do so, and I have made use of it. There are, then, 40,000 francs for your share, besides the 100,000 you furnished me to begin with, making in all 1,340,000 francs for your portion. Now, madam, I took the precaution of drawing out your money the day before yesterday, it is not long ago, you see, and I was in continual expectation of being called on to deliver up my accounts. There is your money, half in banknotes, the other half in checks payable to bearer. I say there, for as I did not consider my house safe enough, or lawyers sufficiently discreet, and as landed property carries evidence with it, and moreover since you have no right to possess anything independent of your husband, I have kept this sum, now your whole fortune, in a chest concealed under that closet, and for greater security I myself concealed it there. Now, madam, continued Debray, first opening the closet, then the chest, now, madam, here are 800 notes of 1,000 francs each, resembling, as you see, a large book bound in iron. To this I add a certificate in the funds of 25,000 francs, then, for the odd cash, making I think about 110,000 francs, here is a check upon my banker, who, not being M. Danglars, will pay you the amount, you may rest assured. Madame Danglars mechanically took the check, the bond, and the heap of banknotes. This enormous fortune made no great appearance on the table. Madame Danglars, with tearless eyes, but with her breast heaving with concealed emotion, placed the banknotes in her bag, put the certificate and check into her pocketbook, and then, standing pale and mute, awaited one kind word of consolation. But she waited in vain. "Now, madam," said Debray, "you have a splendid fortune, an income of about 60,000 livres a year, which is enormous for a woman who cannot keep an establishment here for a year, at least." "You will be able to indulge all your fancies. Besides, should you find your income insufficient, you can, for the sake of the past, madam, make use of mine, and I am ready to offer you all I possess, on loan." "Thank you, sir, thank you," replied the Baroness. "You forget that what you have just paid me is much more than a poor woman requires, who intends for some time, at least, to retire from the world." Debray was, for a moment, surprised, but immediately recovering himself, he bowed with an air which seemed to say, "As you please, madam." Madame Danglars had until then, perhaps, hoped for something, but when she saw the careless bow of Debray, and the glance by which it was accompanied, together with his significant silence, she raised her head, and without passion or violence or even hesitation, ran downstairs, disdaining to address a last farewell to one who could thus part from her. "Bah," said Debray, when she had left, "these are fine projects. She will remain at home, read novels, and speculate at cards, since she can no longer do so on the Bourse." Then taking up his account book, he cancelled with the greatest care all the entries of the amounts he had just paid away. "I have 1,060,000 francs remaining," he said. "What a pity Mademoiselle de Villefort is dead." "She suited me in every respect, and I would have married her." And he calmly waited until the 20 minutes had elapsed after Madame Danglars' departure before he left the house. During this time he occupied himself in making figures, with his watch by his side. Asmodeus, that diabolical personage, who would have been created by every fertile imagination if Lesage had not acquired the priority, and his great masterpiece would have enjoyed a singular spectacle, if he had lifted up the roof of the little house in the Rue Saint-Germain-des-Prés, while Debray was casting up his figures. Above the room in which Debray had been dividing 2.5 millions with Madame Danglars was another, inhabited by persons who have played too prominent a part in the incidents we have related for their appearance not to create some interest. Mercedes and Albert were in that room. Mercedes was much changed within the last few days, not that even in her days of fortune she had ever dressed with the magnificent display which makes us no longer able to recognize a woman when she appears in a plain and simple attire, nor indeed, had she fallen into that state of depression where it is impossible to conceal the garb of misery. No, the change in Mercedes was that her eye no longer sparkled, her lips no longer smiled, and there was now a hesitation in uttering the words which formerly sprang so fluently from her ready wit. It was not poverty which had broken her spirit, it was not a want of courage which rendered her poverty burdensome. Mercedes, although deposed from the exalted position she had occupied, lost in the sphere she had now chosen, like a person passing from a room splendidly lighted into utter darkness, appeared like a queen, fallen from her palace to a hovel, and who, reduced to strict necessity, could neither become reconciled to the earthen vessels she was herself forced to place upon the table, nor to the humble pallet which had become her bed. The beautiful Catalan and noble Countess had lost both her proud glance and charming smile, because she saw nothing but misery around her. The walls were hung with one of the great papers which economical landlords choose as not likely to show the dirt, the floor was uncarpeted, the furniture attracted the attention to the poor attempt at luxury, indeed, everything offended eyes accustomed to refinement and elegance. Madame de Mercier had lived there since leaving her house, the continual silence of the spot oppressed her, still, seeing that Albert continually watched her countenance to judge the state of her feelings, she constrained herself to assume a monotonous smile of the lips alone, which, contrasted with the sweet and beaming expression that usually shone from her eyes, seemed like moonlight on a statue, yielding light without warmth. Albert, too, was ill at ease. The remains of luxury prevented him from sinking into his actual position. If he wished to go out without gloves, his hands appeared too white; if he wished to walk through the town, his boots seemed too highly polished. Yet these two noble and intelligent creatures, united by the indissoluble ties of maternal and filial love, had succeeded in tacitly understanding one another, and economizing their stores, and Albert had been able to tell his mother without extorting a change of countenance, "Mother, we have no more money." Mercedes had never known misery. She had often, in her youth, spoken of poverty, but between want and necessity, those synonymous words, there is a wide difference. Amongst the Catalans, Mercedes wished for 1,000 things, but still she never really wanted any. So long as the nets were good, they caught fish, and so long as they sold their fish, they were able to buy twine for new nets. And then, shut out from friendship, having but one affection, which could not be mixed up with her ordinary pursuits, she thought of herself of no one but herself. Upon the little she earned she lived as well as she could. Now there were two to be supported, and nothing to live upon. Winter approached. Mercedes had no fire in that cold and naked room. She, who was accustomed to stoves which heated the house from the hall to the boudoir, she had not even one little flower. She whose apartment had been a conservatory of costly exotics. But she had her son. Hitherto the excitement of fulfilling a duty had sustained them. Excitement, like enthusiasm, sometimes renders us unconscious to the things of earth. But the excitement had calmed down, and they felt themselves obliged to descend from dreams to reality. After having exhausted the ideal, they found they must talk of the actual. "Mother," exclaimed Albert, just as Madame Danglars was descending the stairs, "let us reckon our riches, if you please. I want capital to build my plans upon." "Capital nothing," replied Mercedes with a mournful smile. "No, mother, capital 3,000 francs. And I have an idea of our leading a delightful life upon this 3,000 francs. "Child," sighed Mercedes. "Alas, dear mother," said the young man, I have unhappily spent too much of your money not to know the value of it. These 3,000 francs are enormous, and I intend building upon this foundation a miraculous certainty for the future. You say this, my dear boy, but do you think we ought to accept these 3,000 francs? Said Mercedes, coloring. I think so, answered Albert in a firm tone. We will accept them the more readily, since we have them not here. You know they are buried in the garden of the little house in the Allées de Meilhan, at Marseille.